Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I have another Toyota. This time actually it's a 2004 Toyota Camry with a P0776. This is pretty much the same as in, or the same fault pretty much as in the Toyota RAV4 for Solenoid B. Obviously the computer is very different compared to the RAV4, but the test still is very valid. And I've been trying to share this. I have a few comments from you or from some of my subscribers as far as are you checking, amperage or is a pulse width? And the answer for both is yes. Yes. So actually, if you have a motor, a light, or something, that will definitely draw amperage. So yes, the computer is checking the amperage of the solenoid as it's being activated. Most of the solenoids since I don't know, maybe 1998 and up are now being activated as a pulse width modulated signal. So that's why we see that up and down and up and down. So manufacturers or automakers find out that being or controlling a solenoid this way reduces the amount of amperage necessary to keep it open. So you will have an inrush amperage when it opens, but pulsing it makes the solenoid stays open and it's more controllable how much they can open and close, right? Because it's if you supply, let's say, battery voltage 12 volts, is either on or off. By pulsing now the solenoid, they can provide 7 volts and keep that solenoid only halfway open, 25% if let's say go to 3.5 volts or so on. So they by pulsing it, because if you just do an on and off, again, you will not be able to open it up with 3.5 volts because realistically it's not 3.5 volts. The actual pulses are all the way up to 14 volts or battery voltage and down to zero, right? But pulsing, 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 pulsing. If you see that onto a meter, all you will see is 7.5 volts, 3.5 volts, or if it's being commanded fully open, the battery voltage, right? So I want to express that because you will not in the meter in the multimeter being able to see that. Why? Because the meter, what it gives you is an average. On the oscilloscope, we are seeing the entire picture. And yes, it might be a little confusing because a lot of technicians and a lot of people is very used to just use a multimeter, but you are missing so much more information that you cannot see because you're just using a multimeter. But a multimeter is still a valid test because why? And I'm using it right now, even though I don't need it because my voltage supply, it has everything. I can see amperage and voltage in here, so that's why I didn't have it on the last capture. But I make the use of a multimeter. You have to be careful when you're using a multimeter that you are in a circuit that doesn't draw more than 10 amps, or I will even say more than 7 amps, because the inrush can blow your meter fuse. Remember, the fuse on the multimeter on the amperage side reading is for 10 amps maximum. All right. So just so you know that. Okay. So, but still, so we're doing this the same way. So I'm going to show you first my connections. I have everything ready here, so let me just pull those up in here. All right, so I have the main signals that I need for this computer are here. Powers on connector E6 pin 1, E6 pin 3, and E6 pin 9. And then on connector E7 pin 6. On grounds, we're going to have on grounds on connector E8 pin 1, pin 4, and pin 7. Then on connector E9 pin 7. The reason I put these lines in here is because these three grounds on the connector E10, we have two more grounds on pin 6 and 7. These three are interconnected inside the computer. So for my test in here, I only need one of either one of those and then the rest. And then the solenoids as I have in here, and the reason I have solenoid 1, solenoid 2, and solenoid 3 depends on the transmission you are using. You're going to have three solenoids and I marked those in here because no, let's say, let's rephrase that. There is not three solenoids. There's actually going to be always two solenoids, but they can be solenoid 2 and transmission 1 can be in pin 16 and 17, or transmission 2 can be on 14 and 15. The one I'm checking right now is for Gasim, or Hasim, I hope I'm saying it right here from Chantilly in Virginia. He has an auto mechanic shop, and I'm checking his computer. So let me click in here. Let me make this bigger. Actually, no, that doesn't work that well. Am I zooming here? Yes, I am. All right, so we have, as you see, connector E10, E9, E8, 6, and sorry, 7 and 6. There are multiple connectors with 28 pins and only one with 26. That will give you a hint of which is E6, and then you can go from there. This center one is empty, and you can see that is exactly the case on this transmission. So this is 6, and I mark it in here so you can see the numbers in the tab 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And that's the wiring that I have connected here. All right, so I'm going to show the test of both solenoids, solenoid 1 and solenoid 2. And for that, we are going to, on this transmission, we will be connected in pins 18 and 19, and then pins 14 and 15. Very important for the correct testing to have the correct polarity. And that is really just important if you're doing this test on the car, right? All right, so what else can I check in here? I got all the wire diagrams, all the pinouts, and I think that to not make the video too long, this is pretty much what I need to show. I can show you also what is in Identifix as far as the sensors. So if you have a fault for code P0776, that's pressure control solenoid B performance. If you have P0746, it's solenoid 8, which is valve SL1 and then SL2. So we are going to check both solenoids. I'm going to show you how you can check this even in the vehicle. Because in the vehicle you will have everything. You have powers and grounds and you had everything to the computer. So if you have a solenoid, this is actually a NIAC valve that has around 10 amps, sorry, 10 ohms of resistance. So it's safe to use. The computer is actually liking it and it's not a problem on it. And the reason I use this one is because it's enclosed. There is multiple IAC valves that you have to, bolt into something. This one is not. So this one is very easy. It's a two-wire solenoid, the same as the one this transmission uses, and we can use this for testing. All right, so let's proceed with the test. All right, so I'm going to get the oscilloscope in place. My settings are I'm only using one channel, right? Because we're going to check one solenoid at a time. So I have 20 volts maximum reading. This is not an automotive solenoid, sorry, oscilloscope. So the maximum voltage that I can put without um, an attenuator. That's why I have those attenuators in here. So with this one, 20 to 1, I can go up to 200 volts or something like that, right? Or 400 volts. But so this one is okay because I don't have any problems. You can see it's only 14 volts. So we're connected in solenoid 1, 500 milliseconds per division. That means that every cut of this that you see here is half a second, 1 second, 1.5, 2, and so on up to 5 seconds. So the total screen is 5 seconds. And I put just those cursors in there to see an amp, not an amperage, lines, but realistically, if we zoom in, and let me just do it with the capture that we have here, which is exactly what is in here, we can see that we have around 13.6, and if I go down to here, it's going down to like minus zero point 0.1 volts because it is a solenoid, so it has that kickback a little bit, right? But yeah, the closest we get to this signal, the more we can analyze the data. Now we can see how as this computer is pulsing it and is staying for longer period of times in high and for shorter periods of times in low. So it's a very pulse width, and I don't think the pulse width will change in here. We'll see that in a moment, but this is more about the frequency than the bottom. So this is not like a duty cycle, it's only a pulse width, all right? And the duty cycle it would change from, let's say, this has a duty cycle of like maybe, I would say maybe 20 to 80%. So 20% low, 80% high. So that's the duty cycle of this frequency, but it's a steady duty cycle. So the computer in here is changing the amount of times how fast this signal happens. So the frequency of this is, let's say, it's going to be 10 hertz. So it's going to make it go to 20 hertz to activate it more or less. And if we can in the vehicle see, because if you see that this changing, then it's not just a pulse width, it's also duty cycle control. So that was something that I cannot see in here because I cannot run the car, but you will see that in the vehicle. All right, so again, we're connected into pins 18 and 19. I'm going to run the scope. So I'm going to just wait. I'm going to turn this on. So we can see the amperage in there. And I'm going to turn this as soon as it starts the signal. All right, so we can see the activation right there. And it did it twice. So I'm going to stop the capture to first show you that indeed is a pulse width modulated signal. So we can see again what we were seeing before, and that is your signal right there. All right, so but as we see, if we go across the screen, it's going to go blank, and I'm going to go over to the other one. So look at this small window. I'm going to the other activation. We're there now. Well, actually, you know what? Is the signal is changing, so it is actually duty cycle control as well. All right, this is a perfect answer in here because the first test the computer does is 80% low and 20, I would even say more than that, like 85% low and 15% high. So yeah, this responds the question that you can see on the signal. So the computer is completely in control, not just of the frequency, also of the pulse width. So it's a duty cycle control signal. All right, hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions and you don't understand the terminology that I'm using in here, please put a comment on the on the links. Sorry, put a comment, and I will more than happy help you understand more of why it's duty cycle and pulse width and what the differences are. All right. But yeah, so we have this and we can see this in here. So I'm going to move it now here because I can grab it in here and I can go into the other one. And I can make this smaller in here. And now we can see how now the signal goes from, it's almost the opposite, right? So now we have more high, right? So it's more in the 14 and less on the 0. And that's why the duty cycle change. But right, so this is again on pins 18 and 19. As you can see, I'm in connector 9 on the last two pins on the second row. And if we go over to that image, when I have the connectors, right here, we can see how the last two on that row are for SL1. All right, so that's solenoid A. Let me move the pins over to solenoid B and we do the same test. All right, I move the cables. Now we can see how the same solenoid is now connected but on solenoid 2, right? So solenoid 2, if I move this higher, we can see this is transmission to solenoid 2 as in pins 14 and 15. Another thing that I forgot to mention, and this is very important, this is the activation of signature of solenoid A. Solenoid B, and this is just with ignition on. So computers are still on, and this is all the activation you're going to see because it's just waiting for the car to start. But on solenoid B, on the other hand, with ignition on until you start the vehicle, it will pulse width, pulse width, pulse width, pulse width. It will stay forever and there. We need to see that. And also, I forgot to mention, this is for Gasim and Chantilly with already a repair computer. So this is a test after repairs. I should have recorded the before, but I have done so many of these ones that I just I didn't know it was like that important for so many people, so I'm trying to just share as much as information. But all right, so let me save this gather file. 1 second. All right, save the file. You know what I forgot to show in the other capture was the amperage, but we can do it on this one. So on this solenoid, since the activation is a little different, it goes up to almost 1 amp with my solenoid. Again, this is my test, so don't try to use that amperage on the same as in your vehicle because it might interfere. Because if the resistance of the solenoid you're using is different, obviously, remember voltage and resistance will equal as amperage, right? So you can use the formula and find out exactly how much it will draw, and then you know if you got something right. Okay, so let me run this capture. So I'm going to show you first the amperage. It takes a second to activate, so we got like a half a second. Hopefully you can hear that. That's the solenoid humming. And as I told you before, that signal will stay on and on and on for all the time. And that is a knowing good solenoid. Before this was coming on and then cutting on and coming. You can see that Toyota RAV4. I'm going to turn the computer off and then turn the capture off because I don't need all those. We can just go back to here and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do a zoom. All right, and we can see the same thing. So in this one, we are having almost like a 50% duty cycle, right? So if we see where we can measure the higher and the lower, and we're around the same way in here. So we can see also, and this is very important. You can, if you want to measure how much or what is the duty cycle of a form, you can let's say start anywhere, right? So, oops, come on. Picoscope can tell you, and this one we can use a math channel. Let me see, no, not a math channel. Let me see, measurements right here, measurement. So we're gonna use trying to look for it. We got duty cycle and frequency. Let's just ask for the duty cycle. It's giving me in milliseconds. We'll trace between rulers, up limit. Um, why is it giving me in time? This is kind of weird. Action on failures, no. Yes, in channel A. Yeah, no, this is a path of failure, hold trace. No, that should be it. But it's not giving me nothing. Let me move this more and see if we get a reading. I want it in percentage. So what we should probably do is exactly as in the capture is showing, to go from here to here. But all we read in there is a cycle of that, and it's a 3.32 milliseconds, so that we don't need. So let's take another measurement. Cycle time, yeah, that's cycle time. I should read that. Negative duty cycle, positive duty cycle, high pulse width. So let's put the negative duty cycle, which is the same. Yeah, so it's 53%. So let's disregard that one, and we can make the reading on the bottom higher. But yeah, so we got pretty much a 50% duty cycle, as you can see right now on Solenoid B. And as you saw, we have almost half an amp. So yeah, this is a very different duty cycle than the one in Solenoid A, but this is a known good computer. So record that in your settings or save this video for your tests. All I need to check these computers are powers and grounds. I don't need the scanner. I don't need nothing to command the zone. All I need is to cycle the key on and off and it will happen. All right, so we can erase this because we no longer need that reading. I'm going to activate this again one more time so we can see that happening all the time because right now it's off. And what I was referring before is I want you to see as soon as that comes on, see the reading of the amperage in here. So I don't need it that, but it's so small. So that's the only reason I put that in there. But yeah, we can see that pulse width modulation signal or modulated signal. Disregard the little drop that you see in there because that's a scope alias. We are very far away from the signal. You see now that we stop it, we don't see those more gaps that were shown in there. That's when you're acquiring the signal, even though I got a lot of samples because I got like right now almost 10 million samples per second. And that is a very, very fast caption. Not really necessary for what we're doing. I just did it because I don't want to lose uh, anything on the waveform. So this is a very capable oscilloscope, and I can do this, but you don't need to. For this kind of signal, you don't really need to do this. And we'll see the same thing. So, by the naked eye, on the naked eye, can go back. Come on. Let me zoom again because I don't know what I did, but I lost that signal in there. See, my eye is already acquire so many signals that I can immediately see that that is almost like a 50% duty cycle waveform, and we can see that it's the same as before. All right, Gasim, this is your computer, fully tested and operational for your fault code. This is a specific repair for that fault code because that's exactly what these computers are prone to fail on the solenoid B, solenoid A or B. B is the most common, but if you wait too long, it will make fail both. This is a very different computer. This one has some of the same resistors problems are some in here. The transmission driver is in here for the solenoids, and then some other on the other back. Yeah, I got it off so I can actually turn this around. And you will see Toyota always uses this type of um, resistors, and they kind of come disordered. So just make sure when you're checking this computer to check these um, resistors and make sure that you solder all of them. And then you have to replace the transmission driver, which I'm not going to tell you the number because I'm not here to sell anything. I'm providing a customer a service and also showing you that you can send this computer to me. All right, guys, thank you so much for visiting the channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye bye.